Hey everybody, I thought I would work on another cuckoo clock while I was in cuckoo clock mode. This is a cuckoo clock that I got from my grandparents' property. It was up on a shelf in the garage when I was out there. I had to take care of my grandparents' property last year. My dad had still had it and he passed away, so I had to go through the courts and deal with all that, but I was going through the garage anyway. This was up on a shelf. I'd been there before, cleaned some stuff out, hadn't seen it, and I was just feeling around and back, like I couldn't even see it. I just felt something back there on this shelf up high. I'm standing on a little stool and pull the pieces out, and it's got the cuckoo clock and the toppers there. There weren't any weights. I can't remember if it had chains, but I've got some weights and chains. It was all busted. This front piece was in several pieces. The tail was missing. I had to make a new tail. And the top of the little wing was busted off. I made a new top for the wing and got this all glued back together. In the back, there was, when I pulled it out of there, there was a mouse nest. The bellows were all torn apart. I recovered all of them last year. I think I wasn't even taking cuckoo clocks apart then at that point. I think I took the Movement and just swished it in the soapy ammonia water and recovered the bellows and put them back in. And it's been running for like a year. Just like that. So it is time to do a full service. Down here, the hole was all chewed out from the mouse building the nest. The mouse nest was up here on top of the bellow and all in the stuff right there. So he kind of, let's see if I can get up under here. He kind of chewed his way in through that hole. Even though the back wasn't on it, the back was just kind of laying to the side, but he chewed his way into that hole and enlarged it and made a nice nest. So anyway, it was a cool find. And I've enjoyed having a little bit of family history. And I'm going to take this apart today and get started getting it cleaned properly. I thought I would do the whole disassembly this time on film because I don't think I usually do that. So, first thing, taking your weights off. And put your topper somewhere safe. Hands. This one has the decorative nut and then a washer. And then it's got the round hole hand with the square hole in the middle of it, which is nice for adjusting your minute hand more accurately. And then the press on hour hand. And if you release your cuckoo bird, you are ready to lay it down and take the movement out. This little bird likes the camera. He doesn't want to go back in. There we go. I just pulled the chain a little bit, put some weight on it, went back in. And then I'm going to lock the door so it doesn't flap around while I've got it laying face down. Okay, so I'm going to put a towel down to work on and take this out of the stand so I can take the hooks off the chains to take them out. Alright, these chains are really rusty. I don't think I cleaned them at all. There's rust on different parts, the bird lift wire and the this little guy, but it hasn't been squeaking. This one was the one the mouse built the nest on, and he chewed on the bellow a little bit. I just put some wood putty in there and squared it back up. It didn't have a hole into the thing that I can recall. But anyway, it still worked good. He didn't chew the paper on the back, and that's all you see when you open the case. So, or she, I guess I should say, the she mouse. This bird lift wire has the little U across the front of it, but it's not holding it. It goes down. I'm going to have to, actually I think that might be a replacement one. There's the old little stub sticking out there. That's one I stuck in, and it's not staying. It's not lifting the bird's tail because it's flopping around. So I'm going to have to secure that a little differently. Might come in from the side over here if there's room. Just put it on this side. I will go over all this again with the Howard's feeding wax, and feed this wax again, feed this wood again. I don't know what I went over it with a year ago. I didn't have the Howard's then, so I heard something rattling when I went to put the box away, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and it was this. This is really loose. It's always just falling down. You can tap that nail and tighten that up. It should stay where you put it. This wood's starting to separate. I'm going to have to do some gluing on this case. I mean, it was in a garage for probably, 60 years. I mean, from the time my dad and uncle were young, when it fell off the wall and broke into pieces, until I found it in 2023. It is not going to tighten that much. Normally one good tap and it's good and snug, but it's not moving. I don't want to bust the case more. So this movement is called an AMS movement. If you look it up, it says Andreas, what's his last name? Meyer. But the more you read about it, it was really registered as a commercial name under his great-grandson, Aloysius Meyer, Alois, A-L-O-I-S, in 1922. And the interesting parts about this that are different are the long, it's basically upside down. The gong's at the bottom, then the short bellow lift wire, and then the long bellow lift wire. And there's this little round knobby thing that pushes your bird post in and out. And for the bird and also a button on your second wheel that activates this. So it's going a little bit before the bird actually comes out. And then for the bird to go back in, let me make sure the light's right on here. For the bird to go back, the actual warning pin hits the top of this lever and pulls it back. So there it's lifting. This is still, this little arm is stuck out to the side. It hasn't done anything with this black part yet. And then as it starts, you'll see this knob push this part out and the bird starts to come out. And it takes a little bit of force to do that. I was trying to do it real gently and slow, but it took a little extra oomph. Okay, so then watch at the end. The rack stop lever falls under the rack, but the bird is still out. And so until this arm gets pulled over by the warning pin, it stays out. So here it comes, and boom, the bird goes back in. And the other interesting part is behind this is a wire spring that comes mounted into this back post and comes through a big hole in the front post and just pushes down on your rack stop lever. So be careful with that when you're taking it apart. You don't want to break that off. They're not fun to replace. There's a little spring under this C-clip, which is unusual. And this movement has a little 430 down here. That's the only designation on it. You got to look in a book to look at your plate shape to even know that it's AMS, because it says made in West Germany, and then it says 430 right there. And I've seen some older movements that are in the 450s. I don't know if that's some kind of year sequencing that they did, that tiny number right there, or small changes in the design. The oldest ones had more metal. This one's got plastic here. That's metal. That's good because that tends to crack. But I think this is all plastic. My snail. And I think that's metal. That's all metal there. So, a couple of plastic pieces. The rest looks metal, other than this bump out wheel and my snail. So anyway, I think we are, and also the AMS birds that I saw had the little notch in the tail, like maybe you clipped them off there, or I don't know. But those are the only ones I've seen, and there may be others, I just haven't seen it, that have that little groove in the tail right there. The star wheel is under the plate on this, unlike Regula, it's on top. It's more like Hubert Herr, it's underneath. But it's not aimed up in the air with teeth, it's just a flat star wheel. And the levers that get lifted on these lift arms are flat pieces of metal coming out. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. The gong's on the bottom, and as I look at it, my gong's on upside down. There's the screw that you tighten it with. So it should be hitting on this flat surface over here, and it's hitting on the screw surface. So I'll have to flip that over. But yeah, the ultrasound's warming up, and I think we're about ready to start taking this apart, get some of this rust off. It's been a pretty dependable movement. I mean, I was really surprised when I just kind of oiled it and got it working. I don't know if I even oiled it. I'm probably oiled it since I put new bellows papers on. I have come up with these that I'm starting to use because I've worked on so many clocks. I made some stickers where I can write the name of the clock and when I worked on it and what I did, so that I can actually remember if I just oiled it or if I did a full service or I did bushings or something like that. And I'm sticking that on the back or the bottom of the case so I can keep track, because I've got too many clocks now. I'm not ever going to know when I need to service them again if I don't do something to help my memory along. It's pretty straight, a little bit bent, but anyway, I'll straighten it and I'll get the rest off of it. Let's take the bird off. Lift wires. There's a spring wrapped around the side of the movement after it goes through that hole. Might not be a good day to work on clocks if a little tiny spring like this is making me work so hard. I'm going to straighten it a little bit because it's got to fit through that hole. Almost got it out of there. Wow. The spring's still good, obviously. It's pretty springy wire. Sometimes it breaks when you're handling it, so I'm trying to handle it gently, but this is pretty good shape still. And the stop for it is just on the bottom. A little bend there. There's splits in the case on the inside where the regular's got the split to the outside where you turn it and come out. The split is more on the inside. So I'm going to see if I can take these off. Yeah. We'll see after I open it. Because the lever, the whole arbor itself is a little different. So the only thing keeping it in is the tab that is the tab that's hitting on the star wheel. There's not two posts like in the regular ones. There's just one wide flat piece right there. So it should line up and slide up, but it is not. Oh, I see. We have some tiny little C-clips down here holding it. Okay. Well. I don't usually take the bird post off, but in this case I may have to. Okay, I'll take those little clips off camera. Alright, I got the little clip off the gong because it's the most in the way when I try to lay it down. Now I can pry on these other two without bending the gong. These two little E-clips are off. So there's the short one. And the long one. Okay, now I'm ready to start taking some of this front stuff off. So that part's all plastic. Oh, this little wheel is plastic. I thought it was metal. Just has a little 7 stamped on it, and the snail has a 7 stamped on it. I guess so if you have to replace... No, it's a 4. I'm looking at it upside down. Alright, so rack's coming off. I'm going to show you a little bit of this mechanism. See our spring pushing it back down at me. It takes a pretty good bit of pushing up to get it to go. It took all that way around, but then the bird post just popped out. We're going down in the cam. This little Y-shaped lever is still over to this side, but it's down because the pin has fallen into the cam, and then the warning pin's going to come around and push that over to the left. to pull our bird back in. The clip for this one is behind the front plate. The clip for this one is the one on the back plate with the spring. And there's that little bitty spring. Alright, let me get to that little guy. I don't think it's going to come off unless I take the bird post off this time because of this little Y-shaped piece attached to it. Maybe it will. I did take pictures of where the big tab on the second wheel was before I moved everything with it in the lock position and where my warning pin was. Alright, so now that I've got the things out from under that, I feel better lifting that cam off. And it's a big cam. Definitely not going to work with that. Alright, my favorite tools, the bent screwdrivers. Alright, we're off of there. It didn't break off, that's good news. Putting it back on is always tricky because you're trying to use a tap to punch it back down, and this little pin is always right next to it. So it's easy to bend that little wire and break it off. Alright, we are ready to flip this over. That's metal. I have a tiny little 4.5 millimeter wrench. It is tiny little nuts on here. clean little movement. There's a little bit of oil and junk built up on there. You gotta be careful of that little spring. Check in here for any grooves, because if you got grooves in this, your little U-shaped hanger is gonna try to stop on you. But I've usually only found that in clocks that are about 100 years old. It takes a lot of wear to start wearing that groove. And I'm going to get a picture and get the pieces out. Go to the ultrasound. It's been warming up.